Dark and stormy night, and a group of 5 teenagers were gathered in an old abandoned house on the outskirts of town. They had heard rumors about the house being haunted, but they didn't believe it. They thought it would be fun to explore the creepy old place, maybe even scare each other a little. As they made their way through the house, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every creak of the floorboards and every whisper of the wind made their hearts race with fear. They tried to laugh it off, but the tension was palpable. As they reached the top of the stairs, they heard a low, growling sound. They froze in terror, wondering what could be making such a noise. Suddenly, a dark figure appeared at the end of the hallway, illuminated only by the lightning flashing outside. The teenagers screamed and ran in different directions, trying to escape the unknown creature. But they soon realized that they were trapped in the house. Every door they tried was locked, and every window was barred. As they huddled together trying to come up with a plan, they heard the sound of footsteps getting closer. The creature was coming for them, and they had nowhere to go. In a last-ditch effort to defend themselves, they grabbed whatever they could find and prepared to fight. But when the creature finally revealed itself, they were paralyzed with fear. It was not a monster, but a ghostly apparition of a young girl. She seemed to be searching for something, wandering the halls of the old house in a state of confusion. The teenagers tried to communicate with her, but she didn't seem to hear them. As they followed the ghostly figure through the house, they began to piece together her story. She had been a victim of a terrible crime, and her restless spirit had been trapped in the house ever since. Finally, they discovered a hidden room in the basement where the girl's body had been buried. They were able to give her the peace she had been searching for, and her ghostly form disappeared into the ether. The teenagers left the abandoned house, shaken but relieved that they had been able to help the troubled spirit. As they made their way home, they couldn't help but wonder if there were other restless spirits trapped in the world, waiting for someone to release them from their earthly bonds. It was a dark and stormy night when Emily woke up to the sound of scratching at her bedroom window. At first, she thought it was just the branches of a nearby tree, but as she peered into the darkness, she saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at her. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The scratching continued, and Emily felt a sense of dread wash over her. She knew she was in danger, but she didn't know from what. As she watched in horror, the window slowly creaked open, and a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a tall, gaunt man with long, sharp claws and ragged clothing. His eyes were black and soulless, and he grinned maliciously at Emily. She tried to run, but the creature was too fast. It chased her through the house, its claws scraping against the walls as it closed in on her. Just as she thought she was trapped, Emily stumbled upon a hidden room in the basement. It was dark and musty, filled with cobwebs and old furniture. She tried to hide behind a stack of boxes, but the creature found her. As it approached her, Emily noticed something strange about its appearance. Its skin was translucent, and she could see something moving inside it, something dark and writhing. Suddenly, the creature lunged at her, and Emily felt a searing pain as its claws tore into her flesh. She screamed and fought back with all her might, but it was no use. The creature was too strong. As Emily's life slowly slipped away, she heard the creature whisper in her ear, "You belong to me now." The next morning, Emily's family found her lifeless body in the basement. The police searched for clues, but they found no evidence of a break-in. To this day, no one knows what really happened to Emily that night, or what kind of creature could have been responsible. But there are those who say that if you listen closely on a dark and stormy night, you can still hear the scratching at Emily's bedroom window, and the whisper of the creature claiming its next victim.
It was an old abandoned mansion, hidden away in the woods, far from the nearest town. The rumors about the place had persisted for generations. Some said that it was haunted by the ghosts of the former occupants who had died under mysterious circumstances. One day, a group of friends decided to explore the mansion. They entered through the broken front door, and as they made their way through the dusty halls, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the sound of their footsteps echoing through the empty rooms. As they entered the grand ballroom, they saw a ghostly figure standing in the center of the room. It was a woman in a flowing white dress, with long black hair that seemed to float in the air around her. She looked directly at them, and they froze in terror. Suddenly, the ghostly figure began to float towards them, her eyes fixed on the group of friends. They tried to run, but the doors and windows had all been sealed shut, trapping them inside. The ghostly figure reached out her hand, and the friends felt a cold chill run down their spines. They knew that they were in the presence of something otherworldly, something beyond their understanding. As the ghostly figure closed in on them, they heard a faint whisper. It was the voice of the woman, and she told them her tragic story. A story about tragedy and sadness. She had been the wife of the mansion's former owner, who was a wealthy and powerful man. However, her husband was abusive and cruel, and she suffered greatly under his hand. One day, she discovered that her husband had been carrying on an affair with another woman, and in a fit of rage, she murdered her own husband in the mansion. She then hid his body away in a secret room in the attic, where it remained undiscovered for years. The woman, feeling the guilt of the actions, went into a deep depression. She eventually developed social anxiety, causing her to never leave her home. The guilt eventually got to her, and she started developing chest pains and began feeling weak. 25 years after her husband's murder, the woman felt like her time had come. She crawled up to the attic, where she found that her husband's body had already decomposed completely. With the last of her strength, she crawled up next to her longtime lover and closed her eyes, never opening them again. The woman's spirit had been trapped in the mansion ever since, unable to find peace until her remains were discovered and given a proper burial. The friend's discovery of her body finally allowed her to rest, and she was able to move on. Moved by her plight, the friends began to search for her remains. They searched every corner of the mansion, and finally, in a hidden room in the attic, they found her body. They buried her in a proper grave, and as they did, they felt a sense of peace descend upon the mansion. The ghostly figure appeared to them one last time, thanking them for freeing her spirit from its torment. From that day forward, the mansion was no longer haunted, but the memory of the ghostly figure and her tragic story lingered with the friends, reminding them of the power of the supernatural and the importance of remembering those who had been forgotten.